So I've got this extra bedroom in my house, and it is time to turn that bedroom into a nursery because me and my wife are expecting. So she has tasked me with smoothing out the ceiling real quick, according to her words, because she wants to paint a little mural on the ceiling of a bunch of different stars. And right now we've got this horrible texture that's on the ceiling, so it's gonna make it incredibly hard to paint. So in today's video, we are going to be focused on getting this ceiling completely smooth. Now to give you an idea of what I mean, this is what it's currently looking like. It's like a popcorn texture, but almost worse. It does not come off super easily. I've tried quickly brushing over it with the drywall knife with no luck. A little bit scrapes off, but not enough for it to actually make a big difference. So I've got one more trick up my sleeve, but before I do that, I need to get this room completely empty because I'm going to be making a huge mess in here, especially when it comes time to actually laying some mud on the ceiling. Now this is currently making my living room an absolute mess, and that is in turn going to force me to have to finish this incredibly quickly. So I'm gonna try to get as flat as I can today and then get a coat of mud on. And then hopefully this is only a couple days worth of work. You can excuse Sasha, she's 16 and has a collapsed trachea, so she coughs a lot and makes a ton of noise. So if you hear that in the background of this video, that is what is happening. All right, so we're all cleared out now of this room, and there's a pretty large echo, so bear with me. But when I said this was not working, I was just trying to scrape it alongside the ceiling and just flatten those areas out, and it just wasn't making a big difference. So when I said I had a trick up my sleeve, I'm gonna show you what I mean. Messy garage, lots of tools. So I could use something like this. It's kind of like a flat spade on a stick. You get a little more leverage with that. I'm not super confident that that's the right tool though. Could try using this guy, which is just a sanding block. I don't think that's gonna do anything because of the paint that is on the ceiling. It's gonna prevent it from being able to actually get sanded. But I do have what I call big dog floor scraper. I use this in a few of my other videos. Comes in very handy as long as you keep this edge sharp, and it's a big flat, probably 12-inch blade that we got there. So let's see if this thing works. So we're getting a lot of it down. You can kind of see it's working a little bit better than the putty knife, but still not making the ceiling flat by any means. So essentially what I'm gonna do is run all the way through this full ceiling with knocking that down just to get rid of any super high spots. And then that way when I go to run the mud over it, it won't be making any crazy bumps with the actual knife itself. At least I hope it doesn't. We'll see. Man, this is killing my shoulders. So I don't know what would make this easier. I don't even know if this is really making an impact, but we're really going for it. So thanks for coming along with the ride while I try and learn how to do this. I do a lot of construction and I've done a ton of mud work, but this is the first time I'm trying to make a ceiling completely flat from this horrible popcorn texture. So I guess I'm just gonna keep pushing. Probably cover this router that I have on the floor before it takes on a bunch of dust and stops working. Because that'll be a really unhappy camper if you can't watch Love is Blind tonight on Netflix. So this thing ended up making some pretty quick work of that. It's mildly flat. It's not gonna ever be perfectly flat, but it's gonna make it a lot easier when I go to put the mud on to give it a flat surface instead of being all bumpy from hitting high spots that are all throughout. It should be relatively even now at this point, as long as I'm going on thick enough. This is after I scraped everything. You can kind of see some of the marks that I made when it was flat, but yeah, we got this horrible texture, and then there's this really poor excuse for a patch over here that I'm gonna have to try and figure out how to cover up. I don't think it'll be too hard, but all of that's scraped down pretty easily actually when I was running the knife over it. So you can kind of see it's flat there, missed a spot there. So I'm gonna go back and hit that. All right, so while I was finishing sweeping up, I got together the rest of my game plan for what I think is gonna work the best for smoothing this out. And in order to start that, I need to make a quick trip to Home Depot. Don't need a lot of stuff, so off we go. Now luckily I only live like 2.5 minutes away from Home Depot, so it's a super easy trip to get here. I'm gonna grab 2 of these bad boys. I think I only need 1, but we're gonna grab 2 just because I don't like making multiple trips. If I need to, I can use it on a different project, or I can just return it. I also picked up one of these like deeper paint bins that like hold it for the roller, and then a couple rollers because I'm just gonna absolutely trash these. Not sure what size nap's gonna work the best for what I'm thinking, but I did like a medium-sized nap for that. It's not super fluffy because I think the fluffy one's gonna make a pointy texture. Then the one with almost no nap is gonna make more like a rolled effect. Santa! Jesus Christ, it never gets easier. Alright, so I'm pressing some of this stuff now, and I grabbed everything I think I'm going to need from Home Depot, so hopefully I don't have to go back, but there's a slight feeling in my gut telling me that I'm going to have to. So my plan of attack is that I'm going to be taking this roller and putting mud in this pan, and I'm hoping that I can get the mud thick enough on this roller to where I can just roll it on and it's somewhat flat. And then I'll take a long drywall knife to it, smooth it out, and then hopefully that is going to give me the exact results that I want and what my wife wants so she can paint this mural on the ceiling. So as I'm starting to get this ready, I'm pretty sure that I read somewhere, or maybe I watched a video many years ago, that if you start to add a cup of water and some Dawn dish soap to your mud, that it makes it smoother and a little bit more wet. And that's what I'm looking for, because realistically, right now, yeah, this is not exactly what I want. So what you're seeing here is that like I can run my finger through it and it's just like super stiff. It's not good at all. It's not even peanut butter consistency. So I'm gonna have to add some water to it for sure. And like I said, I read somewhere that Dawn dish soap will actually make it a little bit smoother. So we'll find out if that's true on this episode of Factory Cat. So I got my trusty Home Depot mug here. Let's add some water to it. Maybe that'll be enough, maybe it won't. Add a little bit of Dawn dish soap. Don't remember how much, so we'll just cover the top a decent bit. And I bought this mixer because I have mine and my drill at my brother's house, which is 35 minutes away, and I do not feel like driving that far. So what I am going to do now is hope to God that this little Ryobi drill will actually spin this big paddle and make this into somewhat of a consistency that I can actually pull onto the ceiling, or I should say roll onto the ceiling. So let's see what happens. As always, it's recommended that you get some closed-toed shoes for this activity, but I'm a professional, so I will be wearing my flip-flops. So what I normally do is lock it between my 2 feet, and then you'll dip the paddle in there and start getting it going. And I don't know how I'm gonna do a POV of this because I only have one hand and this thing is extremely heavy. So I might just set you on the counter over there and do this from afar. All right, let's try not to make a mess, not too hopeful. Well, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Alright, I'm not loving this soap so far. It's making a big old mess in here. Alright, so this is a little more of the consistency that I was going for. Something that like still holds its structure but isn't too wet and just like flows super well together. So my next step is to get this mud in that bucket and start rolling. Then I can take this knife and smooth everything out. I'm just gonna take this knife, scoop it from the bucket, and put it down into the pan for the roller. So that should work a little bit easier than trying to figure out how to actually get this whole drill set up clean. So just take it, slap it in there. We're going for a lot. So this might take a second of just pouring it out, but my goal is to make as little of a mess as possible. I know I poked fun at David Goggins a little bit earlier, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on all these internet gurus who are trying to like keep you motivated and turn you into a millionaire. I used to be kind of a dude bro who followed that stuff, had a strict morning routine. Eventually just got sick of it because it wasn't making me happy. I was getting really annoyed with having to do stuff that didn't make me happy. So I ended up just quitting doing it. I think all these guys are just there to sell you something. There's a time and a place for it. I like listening to a couple of them just kick my butt back in gear when I'm feeling unmotivated. But the only thing that I found that's really like worked, that keeps me excited, is just working. So I don't know, what are your thoughts? Again, this isn't a how-to video, this is more of a how I am doing this. I don't know if it's necessarily the right way, but it's my way. Alright, let's see what happens. Try not to make a huge mess here. So you gotta plop it up, do maybe like a foot at a time. And then from there, slowly start to work your way back and forth. So right now this is looking pretty horrible, but there's enough on there that when I go to pull it, that it'll make it flat. So essentially what I'm doing is rolling it. Guess I can zoom in a little bit more. Get a nice layer on there. And you take it up to the ceiling, don't let her drip. And then roll it backwards. And then once you got it all on there, roll forwards. And then you got yourself a nice thick coat right there that you should be able to just knock down with the knife. Alright, so that's looking like doo-doo. Don't love it, but it's smoothing it out, I guess a tiny bit. And you're gonna get that vibration no matter where you go. So, I'm not entirely sure what to do now. I'm gonna try making this super wet and see if I can change the consistency on the ceiling. Other than that, I might need to just mess around for a little while. All right, to be completely honest, I'm not too jazzed with how this is going. It's really messy. I was hoping this would be going on a lot thicker than it is. So when I pull it on the ceiling, that it makes it essentially flat. I guess my thinking was flawed on that one with how much mud I can actually get on the ceiling. So since I already watered this bucket down so much, I'm just gonna roll the rest of the ceiling, keep it at this a little bit better texture. And then I guess tomorrow I'll come back and just pull everything with a knife. That way I can control the consistency of it and the flatness of it. So I might be counting this one as a fail, unfortunately. But I'm gonna keep trying some different techniques with the roller to see if I can actually get it to work a little bit better, like how I thought it would originally. So if I come up with anything, if it goes as crappy as it has been going, you might just watch me jump to tomorrow and start doing it with the knife and just a regular size pan that I hold in my hand rather than rolling it on there. I might try rolling it to start, but yeah, so I'm feeling a little defeated right now, but I know I can fix it, and it's already better than it was. It's just not going how I thought it was going to go. I figured before we completely wrap up for the day, I want to show you what I ended up with. So over here is a pretty good example of what it looked like when I was rolling it and then pulling it. There's a lot of low spots in the ceiling that just happened from when they originally finished it. So I wasn't able to like pull it with mud, but I started to go over here and pull back with my knife, and it got a lot more of a flat finish. So I didn't do the whole ceiling, but I did all around the perimeters. And something that I struggle with a little bit is not having some sort of perfection on the first try. So this goes to show that I think unless you are keeping that roller texture, it's probably not worth trying to roll it and then put it on the wall. If you're just trying to flatten some popcorn ceiling that isn't coming off really well, then just do it with a pan and a knife. The 14-inch blade was taking me a really long way. Now I was able to get the texture with the roller looking pretty good if I were to just leave it with the texture, but I need the ceiling completely flat, so this is where we're at. So I need to let this dry. We're gonna move on once it is completely dry and I have some free time to keep working on it. So I'll probably see you in a day or two. All right, so we're back with day 2, and my only goal for today is to not get any mud on this shirt because I'm heading to my brother's house after this to work. And I really don't feel like changing, to be honest. So we're doing, I already talked about it a little bit. We're gonna take mud from the pan and smear it onto the ceiling with a 14-inch knife, because rolling it did not go very well yesterday. So I'm gonna try to use the rest of this wet mud that I mixed up, hoping that that would fix the rolling problem. It's gonna be very messy to lay on the ceiling, but I at least know it's gonna work. So just scooping it out of here right now at the moment, filling up this bucket. I'm gonna stand on a different bucket and pretty much just smear it on. And I know this one's gonna work because I've smoothed many other ceilings using this tactic. So, can't go wrong, so I think. Flying through this compared to what I was doing yesterday. Yesterday took me way too dang long to do, but it was a learning experience, so I can't discount that. But all I'm doing here is just loading up on the knife and just getting a good amount on there. Let's see, it's not too much, not too little, just enough to put up there and just spread it backwards. And once I get enough mud on there, all I'm doing is going back over what I did before. And I'm not looking for perfection, just looking for flat enough, because this is already a lot flatter than what it was like 20 minutes ago. The only difference is when you go into these corners here, you have to pull from different angles. So like I just did over that way. Now I gotta go backwards like this, so that it makes a good line. And just slowly working your way forward until everything you do is flat. And then when we go to pull one more tomorrow, we're gonna be able to pull it extremely tight. It'll be almost flat. And then from there, when we do our final sand, it's gonna be absolutely perfect. Honestly, I'm not sure why I didn't start like this, but like I said, it was a learning experience and I wanted to see if it would work. Clearly it didn't, but now we know. The reason I don't buy the bags of mud is because you have to mix them each time per pan. You cannot put them in a 5-gallon bucket and mix a bunch up, just because they'll start drying. This stuff is meant to dry over the course of hours. It's just a different chemical compound. So if you're planning on doing a lot of mudding, you need to use the buckets or like the boxes of mud. The bags, like 90-minute, 45-minute, just will not work for this application unless you want to mix pan by pan, which I've done before. It's not that fun, but it dries a lot faster, which is nice. So pick a poison, whichever one you want to go with. Easiest. I just found that with this amount of mudding that the buckets make the most sense. Got some stuck in here. And then again, that worked a lot better. So yeah, we're just gonna keep working it. At this point, getting close to the halfway point. Probably a third of the way done right now. I feel like I'm cruising compared to yesterday, which is a nice change up. So I'm gonna keep punching away at this so that you've got an idea of it, and I'll catch up with you afterwards. All right, so we are back to day 3 now, and I actually started scraping the ceiling as I came in this morning. I woke up super early to get a little bit of work done, just ate breakfast, and now I'm gonna try and knock out another coat of mud before I head out to work. So where we're at right now is pretty good for the second coat. It's a million times better than it was. We have a lot of ripples, we have a lot of weird edges, but we're the majority of the way flat now. So my next step is to go the opposing way that I went last time and start pulling some mud on. So I'm gonna get at that. Should take me about 45 minutes, and then we'll pretty much be off for the rest of the day because we need to let it dry. All right, and just like that, we are pretty much flat. I know you can see some of the knife marks. However, those are all gonna stand out really smooth once I go to do the final sanding. But what I'm gonna have to do for this one is sand, and then I'm gonna have to get one more coat on because there's a few spots that had bubbles, but overall, I think we're pretty much flat now. So not bad for 3 coats, which is where we're currently sitting. Probably gonna have a 4th on there, and that should do it. I'm gonna have to repaint this whole room. I'm gonna have to prime the ceiling, so we've got a lot of work to get done before we can actually do the mural on the ceiling, but we're pretty dang close to having it completely flat now, which is super nice because it felt like it was taking forever at first, and it felt like I was never gonna get there. But mudding isn't very rewarding right off the bat, so I think that's something that's super important to keep in mind, and don't get discouraged. I was starting to feel it at the beginning, but now that we are sitting where we currently are, I'm feeling a lot better about it. All right, so I am back here for day 4. I think we've got 3 coats on this thing now. We are pretty flat. I am going to knock it down with some sanding, and I'm not using the regular just block sanders. I'm actually gonna be using this big boy right here. It's an 8-inch sander that I can just push up against the ceiling and let it do the sanding for me. That way I can cover a lot of surface area. But here's what I mean with how we are pretty much flat. There's not a lot on the ceiling. I think most of it will get knocked down. And as we start to go some other sections of it, it's just all looking pretty good. I'm happy with how we're turning out. I'm probably gonna regret using this thing because the back side of it, you normally hook a vacuum up to catch a bunch of the dust, and it broke on me. So I'm just gonna be slinging a crap ton of dust out here. So we'll see how that goes. I don't really have high hopes, but it's gonna be a heck of a lot easier than trying to sand with my hand. This room's not that big, I can do it, but it'd be a freaking nightmare to try and do. So I guess let's just get started. Pull off my watch, I do not want to get that all dusty. So we'll plug this bad boy in and get right to it, I guess. So I'm using 180 grit sandpaper on here. I have 80 grit, but I don't think it's entirely necessary to use something that gritty, just because we were pretty much already flat. So I don't want to take a whole lot off. So I guess let's see how this goes. So we actually have a really good start here. I am going to go get the extension pole because it's a little bit harder on my arm than I was anticipating. So I'm gonna see if the extension pole helps. All right, so we are pretty dang close now. You can kind of see in the light that there's not a whole lot left to get. Got a little bit over here that could look a little bit better. Let's see if I can get it. It's kind of hard to even show in there. So I'm gonna do one more coat and then we will pretty much be done after the final sand. I'm not currently quite sure what day we are on, but I've done 4 coats on this ceiling, and all I did for this very last one was swipe some on with the knife and then peel pretty much all of it back so that way it fills in the tiny little gaps, and then I don't have to worry about doing a whole lot of sanding. So let me show you exactly what I mean with that. So up here, you probably can kind of see a little bit of remnants from what I pulled. So it's a lot better than that third coat. A million times better than the second coat. All I have to do now is just hit it pretty quickly with the sander and make sure everything is completely flat, and then we'll pretty much be done. All right, and just like that, I think we have a wrap. I did my 4th sanding on this thing, and I'm pretty sure I got it. I didn't have any spots that I needed to touch up, which I was expecting to have, so that was a pretty pleasant surprise. Honestly, I'm incredibly happy with how this is turning out. I want to give you a shot of exactly what I'm working with. So take a look at this. Everything you're seeing that's circled or whatever I was able to get out, got a pretty flat ceiling all the way around. So over here, like right by the light, there's some like white dots. It's not showing up on the camera, I don't think. Maybe you can see it there, but it's just the texture that was there before that didn't quite sand down. So that's probably gonna show through just a little bit, but overall, like, I don't think I really missed anything. Anything that I did miss will get covered with paint. So I've got everything all swept up in here. Jeff can finally come in and hang out with me while I work and lay on the floor. But all I need to do is get all of this mud up off of the floor. So all I'm gonna do is grab my knife, which is somewhere in here. So all I'm gonna do is go over this full floor, take my knife, scrape it all up, and then essentially what's left over like on the floor that's flat and not like a high spot, I'm just gonna take a wet rag and that'll wash it right up. So I guess my next step at this point is really interested to get a coat primer on this, just to see how flat it actually is and then get the light back on the ceiling. So that way I can get a really good idea as far as what to expect once we paint it blue. And then Carly's gonna end up painting the stars on the ceiling for our boy to look at. So as far as paint goes, I'm just using this cheap drywall primer that you get from Menards. I use it for all of the paint on my ceilings, just because why buy ceiling paint when it's gonna be a flat paint anyways and primer's already flat. So all my ceilings are painted with primer, and this is honestly like my favorite part of projects, is getting all of the paint done, just because one, it's really chill to just kind of zone out and get a bunch of painting done, but it also is like showing the light at the end of the tunnel for your projects. So I kind of lost my paint cup that I use for cutting in. So I think I'm just gonna carry this bucket around with me. There's not a whole lot in it, so it shouldn't be that heavy. But all I'm gonna do is cut in all around the corners and then take a roller on a stick and just get one coat of paint on it. And that should give us a pretty good idea of how we're gonna look once everything is all done. All right, so we got everything completely done with this room on the ceiling. So all I did in that last clip was roll on some primer, and the one thing I did do wrong on that one was the fact that it was old paint. It's probably been a year and a half since I had used it. So it actually was pouring out some pretty little chunks into the pan. So looking back on it, if you're gonna be reusing old paint, definitely use a strainer when you go to do that. They're like $4 at Home Depot. I didn't have any and I wanted to get it done right then and there. So I was having to pick at the ceiling essentially and just wipe off those extra little pieces that got rolled on. And then anything that was super little that I didn't pull off, I went through with my drywall knife and just scraped off afterwards. So there's a few little divots, but it'll get filled up when I go to roll on the blue, which is what I'm about to start working on next. So as far as how flat this turned out, it actually is dang near perfect. There's a few humps in it that I can see, and there's a few spots that I missed where I could have filled in on the 5th coat, but realistically, it's not really gonna matter. My kid isn't gonna look at the ceiling and think, wow, Dad was a horrible drywall guy. So I'm just gonna leave it how it is, get the paint on there, and then let my wife start painting the stars on the ceiling, so that way we can wrap this whole project up. Now I am gonna keep these walls this gray color that we've got back there. And the reason for that is because the things that we're gonna put in here, like the crib, the dresser, the chair, all of his toys, they're all gonna have colors to them. So it's gonna make this area feel a lot better instead of like a modern flipped home with the gray on the walls. I think it's gonna end up looking pretty cool when we're all done. Maybe I'll make a nursery setup video or something along the lines of that. But with all of that, I hope this video helped you out if you were thinking about potentially flattening your ceilings. Hopefully you have a little bit easier time than I did, and hopefully you start with a little bit better of a surface than I did, because that popcorn was an absolute nightmare. But if you like this video, make sure you subscribe, because I am going to be putting out more videos as I just poke at new projects, and my channel is kind of all about just kind of doing things yourself, making sure that you're continuously improving yourself just with your knowledge and your skills. I think it's super important to be able to pass that kind of stuff down and help other people learn as well. And it's gonna save you a little bit of money on top of that. So with all that being said, I'm gonna leave the video there. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.